Hello everyone. Welcome back to our plante. In today's lecture, we'll learn all about the pollination, its self-pollination, cross-pollination, etc., in a simple and easy-to-understand way. So, let's begin. Pollination. When the anthers are fully mature, they shed off the pollens either through slits in their walls or through terminal pores. The pollen is generally carried to the stigma of the flower with the help of various agencies like wind, water, insects, birds, etc. The transference of pollen from the anther to the stigma of the same flower or of another flower on the same plant or of another flower on a different plant of the same species is called pollination. After pollination, petals and stamens fall off. Sometimes the sepals are persistent and remain on the fruit. The pollination is of two kinds: self-pollination, CP, cross-pollination. If mature pollen grains from the anther of flower are transferred to stigma of the same flower or to that of another flower of the same plant, e.g. in pea, cotton, or tomato, the process is termed as self-pollination or autogamy. Auto-self, gamos, marriage. Self-pollination takes place in bisexual flowers only, and never in unisexual flowers. Even in bisexual flowers, there are often certain mechanisms which wholly prevent self-pollination. The progeny resulting from self-pollination gradually become weaker, and it is therefore less frequent than the cross-pollination. Cross-pollination is the rule in nature, and self-pollination is, in most cases, more or less incidental. Except in few specific cases, self-pollination takes place only when and where cross-pollination fails. Some plants have devices which help in self-pollination. P.S. Homogamy, homos, the same. This is the condition in which the anthers and stigmas of bisexual flower mature at the same time. Self-pollination in homogamous plants may occur in the following ways. A gentle breeze might shake the mature anthers, which then shed their pollen grains onto any ripe stigma situated below them. 2. Insects may visit the flower for its nectar and carry mature pollen grains to the mature stigma of the same flower. 3. As the anther mature, the filaments of the anther recoil and bring the anthers close to the stigma. The anthers then burst and discharge their pollens right on the surface of the stigma, bringing about the self-pollination, as in Mirabilis jalapa guliabasi. The reverse is also true in some cases, e.g., in some members of Compositae and Malvaceae, the stigmas themselves may bend over and come into contact with the anthers. I can't copy the text from the image exactly as it appears, due to the limitations of text extraction from images. However, based on the visible content, here's the text transcribed from the page. Kleistogamy, Greek = closed. Some small, inconspicuous bisexual flowers never open at all. They are known as kleistogamous or closed flowers. Ripe pollen grains are discharged onto the stigmas. Both anthers and carpels ripe at the same time. This condition is called kleistogamy. Pleistogamy is generally accompanied by geocarpy, underground fruit formation, e.g. in groundnut. In such cases, the kleistogamous flowers arise on underground shoots. Kleistogamous flowers are without color, and they do not secrete nectar and are devoid of scent. Kleistogamy is found in some species of Viola, Juncus, Impatiens, Oxalis, etc. Advantages of self-pollination. 1. Genetic uniformity in populations is maintained, and parental characters are preserved over a considerable period of time. Seed production is ensured. As compared to cross-pollination, It is highly economical method, as it tries to conserve energy which might have, otherwise, been utilized in the production of more pollen grains, nectar, and accessory structures. It is one of the chief methods to obtain homozygous individuals, particularly in plants, where anther culture has failed to yield haploids. The resulting plants are pre-adapted to the prevailing environmental conditions. Disadvantages of self-pollination. 1. Additional characters cannot, by themselves, get incorporated in self-pollinated plants. 2. With passage of time, self-pollinated plants become more susceptible to disease. Also, vigor and seed production is adversely affected. 3. It is not possible to get rid of any undesirable character. Cross-pollination. If mature pollen grains are transferred from anthers of a flower to the stigma of a flower of another plant of the same or closely related species, the process is termed as cross-pollination or allogamy. Allos, different. Cross-pollination is brought about by external agents which carry the pollens of one flower and deposit them on the stigma of another flower. The agents are insect, bees, moths, flies, etc. Entomophily. Animals, birds, snails, etc. Zoophily. Wind, anemophily, and water, hydrophily. Entomophily, entomon, an insect. Phileo, to love. The most important pollinators are insects, and flowers pollinated by insects are called entomophilous. Insect pollination is a very general occurrence among plants. Pollination in Calotropis. Insect-pollinated flower shows various adaptations by which they attract insects for pollination. Some of these adaptations are as follows. 1. The flowers are showy, i.e., they have brightly colored petals and irregular shape of flower. The brighter the color and the more irregular the shape of flower, the greater is the attraction. Flies are always attracted by color. White flowers growing among bushes, for example, those of Coffea bengalensis, peep forth from dark foliage, and serve to a great extent to attract the flies from a distance. Sometimes, when the flowers are inconspicuous, other parts may become attractive. For example, the breakfast. Flowers. The chilema. Flowers are inconspicuous. In Bougainvillea and Euphorbia pulcherrima, poinsettia, the bracts are brightly colored and make the flowers very conspicuous. If the flowers are small and inconspicuous, they become aggregated to form prominent inflorescences, as in salvia, cassia, sunflower, etc. 2. Presence of nectaries is another important adaptation. Nectarics are glands which secrete nectar, principally cane sugar, that serve as food for the insects. Nearly all Gamapetalous corollas secrete nectars. Sometimes the nectar is contained in long or hollow structures known as spurs, which are formed by the union of two or more sepals or petals. An insect visiting a flower may comes in contact with the stamens before it can obtain nectar. The pollens become attached to its body, and then it visits another flower. Some of the pollen grains are left on the stigmas, affecting the cross-pollination. 3. Emittance of scent also help in attracting the insects. Colored petals are present in those plants which are visited by day-flying insects. The flowers which are pollinated by night-flying insects do not possess colored corollas. They open at night and emit strong scent which attract the insects from a distance, e.g., night jasmine, lady of the night, rat kirani, and tobacco. Sometimes unpleasant odor is liked by certain insects, e.g., the inflorescence of banal, Amorphophallus emits a stinking smell, more offensive than that of putrid meat flow, and always attract a swarm of carrion flies, which affect the pollination. Entomophilous plants produce either sticky pollens or the pollens are provided with spiny protuberances. The stigma is also sticky. Pollen grains afford excellent food for certain insects. Sometimes the insects visit the flowers in search of food or shelter from sun and rain. The pollens cling to the body of the insects, and when they fly onto other flowers and enter them, they brush against the stigma, which being sticky, at once collects the pollen grains from their body. Thus the cross-pollination is brought about, e.g., in poppy, buttercup, etc. In ficus species, banyan, peepal, fig, the insects enter the chamber through the apical pore, hypanthodium type of inflorescence, and as they crawl over the unisexual and female flowers at the base of the cavity, they bring about pollination. The male flowers lie near the apical opening grains, have to be brought over from another inflorescence. An excellent example of entomophily is salvia. In this plant, the flowers are protandrous, anthers maturing before carpels, and brightly colored. The connectives of two functional stamens are enlarged to form lever mechanism with short filaments. The upper end of the connective bears fertile anther lobe, while the lower end bears sterile anther lobe. The insects, which are attracted by the colored corolla, alight on the lip. Inward movement of the insect pushes the sterile end of the connective, and this makes the fertile end to touch against the back of the insect and shed the pollen grains. When such an insect visits older flowers with receptive downwardly bent style, the bifid stigmas come in contact with pollen-laden back of the insect, thereby accomplishing the process of pollination. Filament connective, sterile, anther. Cross-pollination in salvia. It has been seen that each type of insect usually is attracted towards a particular type of flower, color, and smell. This means one type of insects cannot bring about pollination in different types of flowers. The insects are extremely choosy. Such pollinations are termed assortative pollinations. For example, many species of genus Ophrys of Orchidaceae grow together in South Africa, but in nature, hybrids amongst them have never been noticed. This is due to the fact that the insects bringing about pollination are always attracted towards one type of flowers. Incidentally, the flowers of different species of this genus resemble closely the females of Hymenopterous insects. The pollination is brought about by males. At the time of flowering, when the insects emerge, they take the flowers to be their females and alight on them. As soon as the insects realize their mistake, they take off carrying the pollens of flowers of particular type on their body. Again, when they get deceived by the appearance of flowers on other plants and alight on them, the process of pollination is affected. B. Zoophily. Zoo, animals. The flowers pollinated by animals are termed as zoophilous. Zoophily includes pollination brought about by animals other than insects. P. This may be brought about by bats, Chiropterophily in Anthocephalus cadamba, birds, Ornithophily in Bignonia, snails, Malacophyllae in Erythema, squirrels in Rafflesia, etc. Bat-pollinated flowers exhibit the following common features. Part 1. The flowers are dull in color and emit a strong disagreeable odor resembling that of sour milk. End. Number 2. They occur singly or in clusters on long stalks, as a result of which they are quite separated from branches and leaves. 3. Flowers open only at or after dusk. Examples: Mucuna gigantea, Kigelia africana. Birds' pollinated flowers show following characteristics. Flowers are showy, but usually odorless. The flowers are usually tubular, Nicotiana glauca, cup-shaped, calistemon, or urn-shaped, members of Ericaceae. The pistils and stamens project far beyond the perianth lobes. Pollen grains are produced in large numbers. Also, the nectar is produced in large quantity. Pendant flowers are usually pollinated by hummingbirds, whereas erect flowers are pollinated by sunbirds. C. Anemophily. Anemos, wind. The wind-pollinated flowers are known as anemophilous. These are small, inconspicuous, without colored petals, and often without scent or nectar, because insects are not required to be attracted. E.g., grasses, cereals, sugarcanes, oak, birch, poplar, walnut, etc. The anemophilous flowers show following common features. Flowers are small and inconspicuous. The corolla is very much reduced, or maybe even lacking. I can't copy the text from the image exactly as it appears, but I'll type out the visible text for you. Here's the text from the page. 2. The pollens are light in weight so that they may easily be carried away by air currents, except in maize, where they are heavy and large. 3. The pollens are produced in very large numbers, e.g., about 18,550 pollen grains are produced by a single maize plant. A large quantity of pollen grains may be wasted when these are blown away by the air. In gunpowder plant, Pilea, the anthers explode and puffs of pollen produced which are carried by the wind to the female flowers. In Urtica dioica, the stamens spring violently and the anthers burst, discharging the pollens which are then carried by the wind. Flowers possess feathery stigmas, or the stigmas are large and branched, and thus expose a large surface to catch the pollen grains, as in castor oil plant, wheat, oat, etc. In some plants, the flowers possess large anthers borne on long filaments. When the anthers are mature and they shed off the pollen grains, these are easily carried away by wind. Similarly, in some cases, flowers have carpels borne on long stalks to receive pollen carried by the wind. In many plants, especially in trees, the flowers appear before the leaves, so that the air-blown pollen grains may have free access to the flowers. Number of ovules developed per ovary is less. E.g., in grasses, a single ovule is present in each ovary. This is an important adaptation, as not all the ovules have the chance of being fertilized. The anemophily predominates in terrestrial plants, but many aquatic plants, e.g. Potamogeton and Myriphyllum, are wind-pollinated. Hydrophily, hydro-water. The water-pollinated flowers are known as hydrophilous. The hydrophily is rare, and most of the water plants raise flowers out of water and are pollinated by wind or insects. The hydrophilous flowers are unisexual, small and inconspicuous. They are borne on long Potamogeton. The pollen grains of hydrophilous plants remain floating under the surface of the water and are carried to the stigmas of the female flowers by water currents. Examples: Lemna, Vallisneria, tapegrass, Hydrilla, Ceratophyllum. Hydrophily is of two types. Hyperdrophily. In this type of hydrophily, the plants are pollinated inside the water, e.g. in Zostera ceratophyllid. In Zostera marina, the pollen grains are light in weight, having specific gravity almost as that of the surrounding water, quite long and needle-like. When this pollen grains come contact with stigmas, which are quite long, they coil around them. Epihydrophy. In this type of the plants are submerged, but the flowers reach the surface of water for pollination, e.g. Vallisneria. In Vallisneria spiralis, tape grass, the male and female plants are separate, dioecious. The male flowers are produced on short stalks and are in groups, forming a spadix, surrounded by a spathe. The male flowers remain under the water, while the female flowers are borne on long stalks, which remain spirally coiled and keep the flowers submerged underwater. At maturity, the male flowers, still enclosed in perianth, break from the peduncle and reach the water surface, where their perianth spreads out, exposing the anthers. At the same time, the female flower rises to the surface of the water by uncoiling its stalks. The floating male flowers, when collide with stigmas, their anthers burst open and the sticky pollens get deposited on the stigmas. The pollinated flowers are drawn back into water by the coiling of long stalks. Contrivances for cross-pollination. Epihydrophy in Vallisneria spiralis. Cross-pollinated species show many functional and structural modifications that prevent self-pollination. Some of these are: 1. Genetic or physiological self-incompatibility. If in some cases, pollen from the anther happens to fall on the stigma of the same flower, it does not, usually, germinates. In rare cases, where it may put forth a pollen tube, the growth of this tube is stopped at just below the stigmatic surface, 1 Othera, or at the styler level, Petunia, or in the upper portion of the ovary, Lilium. Heterostyly. Heteros, different. There are some plants in which the length of stamens and styles is different. The length of the stamens does not correspond to the length of the style in the same flower, but with the styler lengths present in other flowers. This is termed as heterostyly. The heterostyly prevents selfing and promotes cross-pollination. In Primula vulgaris, distylic flowers are produced. In one type of the style is much longer and the stamens are shorter, while in the other type of flowers the style is short and the stamens are longer. The plant producing long-styled flowers is called pin plant, and that producing short-styled flower is known as thrum plant. Seed formation take place when pin plants are crossed with thrum plants. In members of families Linaceae, Lythraceae, and Oxalidaceae, 3 types of flowers are produced, i.e., with short, mid, and long styles. These are known as tristylic flowers. In each flower, anthers are present at 2 different levels, corresponding with styler levels present. The page appears to be from a botany textbook discussing topics like dioecious flowers, with diagrams labeled for a flower of pin plant and ferrum plant. Unisexuality, with examples of plants like maize, monoecious, mulberry, dioecious, and mango, polygamous. Dichogamy, a condition preventing self-pollination where anthers and stigma mature at different times. It explains 2 types. Protandry, anthers mature before stigmas. Protogyny, stigma matures before anthers. The flowers exhibiting protandry are called protandrous, while the flowers exhibiting protogyny are termed as protandrous. The protandry is more common than protogyny. Herkogamy, herkos, a fence or barrier, in some homogamous flowers, in which ovules and anthers mature at the same time. There are certain floral parts that show adaptations which act as fence or barrier to self-pollination and favor cross-pollination through the agency of insects. Some of the common adaptations are as follows. 1. The anthers may be inserted within the corolla tube, whereas the stigma is exerted. Example, in members of Caryophyllocele. 2. The style is inserted and the anthers exerted, so that the stigma is out of reach of its own pollen, as in Gloriosa. 3. Anthers may be hooded by petals or petaloid style, as in Iris. 4. The stigma may be guarded by a flap or a lid, as in Pansy. Suppression of sexes. In some bisexual flowers, one sex is impotent, i.e., incapable of performing its normal functions, and the other is functional. This condition obviously necessitates cross-pollination. Stimulus of touch. In P and some other members of Papilionaceae, the stigma does not become receptive until it is rubbed. This is brought about by a visiting insect, which, while rubbing, deposit the pollen grains on the stigma and thus affects the cross-pollination. Advantages of cross-pollination. 1. Plants may show heterotic effect, i.e., hybrid vigor, as in maize. 2. With the introduction of desirable characters, new useful varieties evolved through hybridization. 3. Cross-pollination increases genetic variability in populations, which help its members to adapt themselves to varied habitats. 4. With passage of time, seed production and vigor of plants is not affected. Parentheses. Heterozygosity is maintained in population, which help to overcome any deleterious effects of recessive genes. Parentheses. Disadvantages of cross-pollination. 1. It is highly uneconomical method, as considerable amount of energy of plants is wasted in production of large number of pollen grains, nectar, and accessory structures, promoting cross-pollination. 2. Seed production is not fully ensured. Example, in an insect-pollinated population, if sufficient number of insects do not emerge at a time when the flowers are receptive, then the seed production is adversely affected, as all the flowers of the population may not get pollinated. 3. Desirable characters in plants are likely to be segregated. It is thus difficult to maintain the purity of the genome. If you found this video helpful, please give it a thumbs up, share it with your friends, and don't forget to subscribe for more easy biology lectures. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next class.